I work for Amazon Web Services, and I am a vice president here in charge of our public sector and regulated industry partners and programs. Yeah, I would love to do that because data has such gravity and is so incredibly important. A lot of people use an analogy, Asher, that data is oil, but I like to say that data is soil because everything else grows up from data. Every person today on the earth generates about 1.7 metabytes of data every second. So imagine all of that data. If you could use that as a starting point for how your company or agency or government or you conduct your business, you could really capture relevant business insights instantly that fuels innovation. So it's really gone from being something that was cumbersome, expensive, to becoming the lifeblood of many customers' business model. If you think about what's happening in the market today, there are changes that are being driven by COVID. And Asher, some people say, well, this is the new normal, and then it'll go back to the way it was. I don't think we're ever going to go back. I don't know about you, but I don't see us going backwards. And so I see a lot of things that COVID has sped up. Digital transformation, for example. In fact, one of our dear partners, Trilio, did a study and said that digital transformations have sped up by 5.3 years. Roadmaps were compressed into weeks and days because of what happened with COVID. And I really don't see us going backwards. I really see us driving and using more and more data. I know you've got some technologists on the line and some go-to-market leaders, but I think in order to really and fully grasp the value of data for your business, I'm not talking about you as an executive right now, but for your business, you need to get your data into a data lake. You need to set up analytics so you can get insight from that data. And then ultimately, you'll want to leverage AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, to anticipate changes and to look ahead. And that could be used in many, many different ways. So a lot of this has changed over time. And I was just looking, Asher, at the latest World Economic Forum. So I sit on one of their diversity committees there, and they just released a new report. And data scientist, digital transformationist are the top two jobs, supposedly for the next 5 years. Jobs we had never even heard of, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, have now become the top and most important jobs at different companies. Understanding data is so important.
Yeah. So what I've seen, and I spend a lot of time with go-to-market teams, and it's almost like the data teams used to sit in IT, and they were a function of IT. They would work on compliance. They would work on like ingestion of data and making sure that the data was prepared well. And now the data teams are actually being moved into the functional groups, as whether you're a go-to-market leader or you're a product leader or you're a company leader, the CFO, I'm sure at some point in time will also have a data team that supports them, that has data scientists in it. There's this explosion of data science and the promise of data science. And I just want to also define what a data scientist does, right, and doesn't do, because we used to have business intelligence folks, and we used to have data analysts, right? And then the data scientist's job is actually to understand the root cause of a problem and build a solution from there, versus the data analysts and the business intelligence folks are just reporting on what's being done. And so that's
So,
the
and Asher, could I add one thing to that too?
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
also think a really important difference for a data scientist is data science is interdisciplinary. So it's not just a technology job. It's really a job that combines several different functions to extract knowledge and insight. And I do think that that's a really big difference from what it used to be as well.
That's a really good point, because when the data scientists get into these functional teams, right, they do need the same ramp time, and the teams that are hosting these data scientists in the team need to help them understand their world. And I've actually heard from multiple data scientists where they don't know if these teams will actually accept them or not. And there's a little bit of this cultural element too, if you want to unlock the all the goodness that these people can bring to you.
Yeah, and I will tell you, if they don't feel accepted on their team, come to my team because we're hiring data scientists like crazy. It's really important to understand the what we're seeing with customers, what we're seeing with partners. I mean, again, this explosion of data. And I will tell you, right before this, I was on with IDC, and we were chatting about the explosion of IoT and all the sensors that now exist in every supply chain, in your tennis shoes, right? I mean, they're everywhere. And what does that do? Well, that creates even more data. And IDC has said that the amount of data since COVID, because of these sensors now, has exploded 5 times bigger just since COVID. So, what's that, like a year and a half?
Yep.
And that's even, I think, going to push up the importance of this data scientist role as well. Oh, wow. The partners are really essential for this particular area. If you think about it, I'll just speak about our AWS
Yep.
partners. So they leverage our technology to help support and accelerate what we're seeing as the top trends. And so, mission driven innovation and this digital transformation is all based on data. And so partners today bring to bear their subject matter expertise, both in the industry side, like data for healthcare needs HIPAA compliance. And it's very different types of data than what you would need in, let's say, for space or for, a transportation company. And so, for example, we just named 2 award-winning partners for our data-led migration area. One is Calibra and one is Databricks. And if you look at them, both of them provide that extra special value that customers need. So Calibra run for their data intelligence platform. And what it does is it brings together fragmented data environments that exist out there. So, if you've got structured data and unstructured data, you've got data sitting in spreadsheets and people's heads and different servers, it really helps to integrate that and then helps them to find value in that. So AWS serves as the infrastructure, but that data level is done here by this partner. And then Databricks is really focused on moving data from on premises to the cloud and then applying analytics and machine learning models. And why does that matter? Well, you've got so much data. When you start training a machine learning model, you need a lot of power. And that really happens in the cloud, that you can turn it off and turn it on. You don't want to build a data center out for that. So these are just some of the ways that we see, our partners that are so essential in the space, leveraging this opportunity in the market. And I will tell you, I was just reading a report this morning that came out of IDC, and it was showing the importance of data and analytics. And yesterday, I just saw a report from Gartner on healthcare. And now the number one issue in healthcare is getting the right data and doing analytics on it. So this will, again, continue to accelerate. And partners are a great way to leverage value for your particular problem or issue that you're having in your company.
I'm also seeing data systems integrators, you want to call them, or maybe like we can drop the word systems and just call them data integrators, like the Brooklyn Data Company and stuff. And they're just sporadically coming up. And when you look at those companies, they're built off data scientists in them, and all they're trying to do is work on that insights layer, because they know that the pipeline builders and all those guys, like, they've already done the work, and then people are struggling to understand or extract value from the data that they already have. And then there's this type of potential partner brewing up as well.
Yeah, I agree. Like Datacom for me is a data integrator. They also won an award for us around the work that they're doing with data. And as a data integrator, they're looking at storing the data, analyzing the data, interpreting the data, and helping companies figure out how to act on the data, which is even more important, I think, is the actions that you take, not
Yes.
just that you have all this data sitting around. I think this is particularly important for the go to market teams too. Asher, you started out telling me that a lot of the audiences go to market.
Yep.
And, if you look at surveys, I was looking at one yesterday, like what is the biggest gap that companies are now seeing in that marketing go to market area? And it's the use of data to make the right business decisions. How are you doing that? So, as a go to market leader, as you're analyzing your channel, are you using data to do that? Is it a data backed decision? If you're a marketeer, are you using data to target the right audience? If you're a sales leader, are you using the right data in order to demonstrate your value to the customer? So this is not just for the engineers. This is directly for all these go to market leaders that exist out there today and who are doing such a great job. I really think a secret weapon for any company is their go to market team.
100%. Yeah. I think the reason why companies fail, or I guess I live in San Jose, so it's the reason why startups fail is because they run out of money. Or I guess one of the leading reasons is that, and then the second thing is they run out of money because they can't get sales done because they don't target the right person, or in some cases they target everybody, and then they serve a whole plethora of customers when they should be really serving one type of customer to get them to scale phase.
Yeah, I completely agree. And if you think about it, data literacy is going to be really important to every business leader. And in fact, Asher, that might be a good series for you, right?
Yes.
Let's do kind of, phase one, phase two, phase three of data literacy. What does that mean to you as a go-to-market leader? Because you will be looking at different, different things. How you do your segmentation, for instance,
Yes.
should be data-driven. And if you can use analytics, you get, kind of a C. But if you can use machine learning and AI, maybe you're up there in the A or A plus range. So I think teams need to start thinking about how they're using and leveraging their data. What is their literacy? Do they have the right team? I just told you, that we've hired data scientists, and um, you just can't replace that skill today. There's just too much information. You need insight and actionable elements. You don't just need more data. I think the first piece as an executive and helping to leverage data is just the recognition that you need data and you need the right data. One of the funniest things, and we don't have a picture here, but let me see if I can paint a picture with words. So I show a picture of two sumo wrestlers. And what we decided to do to illustrate the point that you need the right data is we fed into a machine learning model. So we did training on a machine learning model with romance novels. So we did 11 million romance novels. We input that into the system and we train the machine learning model. Now remember, these are two sumo wrestlers.
Yes.
And so then we said, looking at this picture, Mr. and Mrs. Computer, tell us what you see. Well, what is the story going to be? If you input all romance novels, the output is going to be, oh, he leaned over and gently kissed him on the cheek. Well, that's not at all what two sumo wrestlers are doing. And I have executives really laugh at that analogy. They're like, yeah, who would use romance novels to train for sumo wrestling? And then I say, okay, now let's talk about your company. So, what data are you inputting in to train this learning model? Everybody wants to talk about machine learning and AI, but unless you have the right data going into the training, the output is going to be wrong. So I think for every executive to think about first is what data do you need? What data do you use to make decisions? And do you have the right quantity of the data, right? You need enough data to be able to make the decision. Do you have enough quality of data? The data has to be good quality. And do you have the right data source? So you've got to look at all of those as an executive at a business looking at the data. I think the second thing you need to do is figure out you're going to get a lot of data, that quantity usually, or you're going to buy data if you don't have enough. Is now how do you get insight from all the data that you have? How are you going to, search that data, filter that data, aggregate that data, visualize that data so that you can make the right decisions and get the right insight from the data? I had one executive who was showing me some of the data that they had received on go to market. And in their board presentation, they just had PowerPoint after PowerPoint of the data. But what the board was looking for is, okay, given the data, what's the insight? Like, what are the nuggets that you want us to take away? And then I would say finally, and people want to start here, but they have to really get through the stages, is machine learning. Machine learning can really help assist in driving better decisions. So I'll just give you one example. We have a partner, Splunk, and they've been working with the city of Los Angeles, where you're from, or where you recently
Yes.
lived. And the city of Los Angeles said, look, we've got all these agencies. We want to be able to act really quickly against any cyber attacks, all these ransomware attacks, everything that's going on. So we need to figure this out. So what Splunk was able to do is not only gather the data, make sure they had the right source, the right quantity, the right quality of data, but they were able to do real-time analysis, Asher, of 240 million security records from 40 different agencies that increase the city's ability to protect against 100 million cybersecurity threat attacks. So that's what we're talking about. You're going to eventually use machine learning to anticipate, but you've got to start with, where is the data? Is it the right data? Is it in a data lake? To doing analytics on it, to then getting into the predictive capability, which is machine learning.
I would also love to add that as an executive, you should be thinking about scale when you think about everything, right? And you can incubate in a section of your company, but you have to think about scale, and the tools that are available now allow you to do that. And if you have some time, take some courses, or start a podcast and interview data scientists, because those folks out there would love to talk to other people, especially executives, who would listen to them and hear their stories out. And once you unlock this capability, you'll have really rich insights. But then the second point I would love to make is once you have the insight, and especially if you go to a board, if you're going to talk about an insight, please also talk about what you're going to do about the insight, and that you've thought about the resourcing for that initiative. Because the one thing that boards hate, at least, and Sandy, you can confirm this, right, is or deny this, right, is if you go with an idea and don't have the resourcing and the how you would do it, and you can explain it to them in like 30 seconds or less, you're not going to get an approval, and you're still going to have to come back again.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You definitely need to figure out and state how you're going to execute your implementation plan. I would agree. The other thing that I would add to it is, there is a new concept now too called explainable AI, explainable artificial intelligence, to where, it's not just a black box. So if you are presenting to a board, it shouldn't be, voila, we used machine learning and AI and this was the output. They're going to want to understand how it happened. So you've got to be able to have explainable AI. So this is the input we used. These are kind of the algorithms we were thinking about, and this is the output. Not it was black magic that happened as you move forward.
Yes. It's so interesting to hear you say that, because even in my short career, right? Like, I've gone from sales leaders who would say, yes, we can see it. We should totally go make our number. We should go dial like 1 million calls a year and get it done, right? And we're now in the world where people and boards are asking for, can you tell me like where you got this data from? Because that would never be a thing, right? Like, it would just say, okay, you're making the numbers and you need to add more headcount, et cetera, et cetera. We get there. But now people actually want to know, where did you get this data from?
Mm-hmm.
Was that data gathered ethically and responsibly? Are you making sure that once the data is used, it is taken care of, or purged out of the systems? And there's this entire like data responsibility thing that's come up as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it's always important to explain how you reach a conclusion, whether you reached it yourself or whether you leverage a tool like artificial intelligence or machine learning to help you come to that conclusion. It's always important that you can still explain how you got there, and and what really happened, what really drove that um, to help you gain that insight as well. I think that's really important. Really, in anything that you're doing, whether you're using data or not, being able to explain very succinctly how you reach that conclusion is going to be really important. There is no one size fits all. So I'll just give you, Asher, I'll give some kind of um, what we call some of our leadership principles that I think are really important as you're looking at becoming, that higher level executive. So, one, I believe that is essential is to be curious, constantly be learning, and ask a lot of questions. So for me, this is important because we kind of let off with, well, there's all these new roles out there that didn't exist 3 to 5 years ago. So if you're not constantly learning, you're going to be left behind. And as a VP or as a senior executive at a company, you're going to be leading the change. You'll be disrupting yourself. And so one of the ways you do that is you have to be able to look around corners and see what's coming and even maybe make what's coming come. A friend of mine wrote a book called The Creator's Code. And what she did was she researched all these amazing innovators: Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs when he was alive, Elon Musk. And one of the things that she found out is that these incredible innovators ask hundreds of questions every day. They're really curious, like they want to know why something's happening this way. They're not asking you to trip you up. They're asking you because they genuinely want to know. And so when she found that was common amongst all the great innovators, she went out and she looked at how many questions we as adults ask. And on average, we as adults ask about 10 questions a day. Now, you might ask more, Asher, because you're doing these podcasts, but in an average work day, an adult asks 10 questions. And so she said, wow, so is it just that great innovators have always asked those questions? So she went back to studies and she found that kids ask hundreds of questions every day. It doesn't matter who they are, all of them. I mean, I have two daughters, like, why is the sky blue? What is that cloud out there? They're constantly asking questions because they're curious. And somewhere between being a child and an adult, we lose that curiosity. So I think if you're going to pursue a bigger role, you need to retain that curiosity, and that learn and be curious is very important. I think the next area that is super important for a senior level executive, at least in my opinion, is that you are empathetic. You're like a super empathetic person. That's not only for your employees, especially right now, that's super important. But it's also for your customers. At Amazon, we call it customer obsession. You're obsessed with your customers. You're not obsessed with your competitors. You're obsessed with your customers. And that gives you that edge. Like because you talk to your customers so much and you're so obsessed with them, you're always the one who can come up with a new idea because you're in touch with where they are and what they're doing. And then I think the final one is reinvent and simplify. I think the higher up in an organization you go, the more you need to look across it and say, there's a lot of complexity here. You kind of get above everything and you can see some of the complexity maybe that others don't see. And then you need to really focus on reinventing and simplifying that. I think that's really important for every executive. So this morning, for example, I was on a call with all of my managers. And we were just, it's simple, but automating some of the things, how many hours it could save us. So we took one project and we could save 11,000 hours just by doing that one automation. But no one would have really connected the dots had we not had someone overall looking at it. So for me, I think those are three things. If you're thinking about going to that next level, do you love asking questions and learning and exploring? Do you love sympathizing and empathizing with your employees and really obsessing over your customer? And, do you get joy from simplifying and reinventing things? I think if the answer to those are yes, I think it would be a good fit and something that you should explore.
And I would also say give yourself time, because I don't know if many people take the time to apply like some of the guidance that you've given, right? But then they're too hard on themselves, right? And once you get to a level, you have to actually like spend time and enjoy even the little conversations, the most complex conversations, increase your span. But the more important thing is you just have to give yourself time, and then of course surround yourself with amazing people. But I feel like everybody at that level is amazing or is destined for greatness. Some just choose to not give up and get to the finish line faster, or just get to the finish line, period. But you do have to give yourself time. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's any, some people will say, well, I need to be at this level in 5 years. I need to be at this level in 10 years. I don't think it really works that way. I think everybody is very different. And, if I look at my career, it'd be going up, sideways, backwards, sideways, up, down. You'd go all over. And I don't think there's one typical path. So I think you do need to take your time. And there may be times, Asher, when you want to really step up based on what's happening in your life and the business, and maybe times when you want to pull back a little bit and wait and contemplate and think about what that next thing is. Because regardless of what you do, what level you are, you need to really love what you do. You need to be passionate about it. You spend too much time at it. I think that's why right now we're seeing people reevaluate their lives and their
Yes.
careers and what's important to them. And I think you constantly need to be doing that, because if you don't get joy from what you're doing, you do it too much. You really need to look at what that next thing is.
And actually, like if you look at the last, let's say, year or so, right? I think people panicked, and because people panicked, they got they had to like stay where they are at, and then because if you panic, the safest thing is don't do anything, right? And then now people are started. They've had time, or maybe like 12 months or so, to think about what they want to do next, and they are well prepared, and for sure they're going to be ready for if another type of pandemic thing happens here. They're definitely going to be prepared, but they also are well planned for the steps they want to take next. So I think the moves people are going to make are actually intentional. They're not just frustrated, but they just see themselves at a different place doing different things.
Yeah, I think that's true, and I also think there's this fear of missing out too, right? I think you can't constantly be looking at it's just like my example of, are you customer obsessed or are you competitor obsessed? If you constantly spend your time looking at your competitors, you're always going to be behind. You're going to be a copycat. You're going to be a follower. If you always spend your time looking at customers, you're going to be ahead. I think the same thing is true for you and your career. If you're constantly reading Facebook and looking at LinkedIn and going, oh my gosh, look, Asher just moved to Silicon Valley. Wow, Asher's doing these magnificent things. Versus looking at what brings you joy, what brings you value, what are your superpowers, right? My superpowers aren't the same as your superpowers. And I need to be focusing on my superpowers and how I can bring value, not comparing myself to you. And I find a lot of people do that. In fact, a lot of people will come into a mentoring session and they'll say, well, I just read about Fred on LinkedIn and I'm like, no, I don't care about Fred. Let's talk about you. Like what do you love to do? What is your superpower? Where do you see yourself? And I think it's really important. I think social media has kind of trained us to have that fear of missing out. Yeah, so I do have a list and I do limit it because I found I love helping people, Asher. And so I said yes too much. And if I say yes too much, that means then everybody kind of suffers. So I started limiting myself to a certain set of mentors. And I'll sign up for a year and see how it goes. So there's one or two that I've had for 10 years, but a
Wow.
lot I'll mentor for a year and then say, you're going to graduate now, or you're going to now you need your board of directors of mentees that your mentors that you're going to go after. Um, I try to pick people that I feel, well, first of all, they have to ask.
Yes,
So
of
a
course.
lot of people will come to me and they'll say, Wow, I see you're mentoring Sarah, but I didn't get asked to be a mentee. What happened? And I said, well, she asked me. So you do have to ask. So be bold enough to ask. When you ask, you should come in and say why and how you think that that executive can help you. Not just because I want to get to know you better or I admire you, but what is it that you like about what I do or how I work that you want to learn from? I also do sessions. I typically do 30 minutes and I let the mentee drive it. I have them bring in like two or three things that they're working on, no more than three. As you know, I like my
Yes.
threes. And then I usually end with, okay, here's a couple of books that I recently read, or here's a couple of articles I recently read, or most recently, there was a podcast that I thought was great. I said, here, take and listen to this podcast just to, again, constantly be learning and be curious at all times. And that's kind of what I do. And I think so far, um, my motto is to reach back and pull others forward. I've got lots of examples, lots of great people out there that are just doing incredible things now. And I hope I played some small part in that. Yeah, so I personally post a lot of things out to LinkedIn. In fact, I just posted, I was actually doing some mentoring with some of my partners, and I told them about my new email footer. It's a truly human notice that basically says, look, we're all working so much and we're a digitally enabled economy now and I have a global team. So there's really no great time for me to send email. So I'm going to send it when it's good for me. You reply when it's good for you. I was surprised about the outpouring of that particular post. I had like 1.5 million
Wow.
engagements on that post. Yeah, my biggest one to date. It was incredible. I would say 90% of the people thought it was great. Some thought I should figure out a way to schedule email so it went at the right time to the right person. And I don't know how to do that. Maybe I'll use AI and ML to figure that out in the
Yep.
future. But anyway, so I tend to post a lot on LinkedIn, and I would love to have anybody follow me there. I tend to read a lot of books. I met Malcolm Gladwell. I love his books, Outliers, Blink. There's several of his books that I just find fascinating. One of the folks that I use as a mentor recently recommended a book called High Output Management by Andy Grove. It's an older book, but it really focuses on you can get your teams to focus on the output, not all the in process metrics.
Yes.
I also find that reading relaxes me and helps redirect my mind. So I read a lot of fiction too. And I encourage people to do that just to kind of, because if you're always reading business books and you're always on, I do feel like you're going to burn out. So I do feel like you should, read some things that are different. And then I think your podcasts are great. You've got some great and interesting insights from B2B marketeers and sellers. Of course, if you're listening today, you may already know that, but I think that your podcast is a really good one too because it provides actionable insight and things that you can really focus on.